Hi everyone. Okay, so yeah, Kirsty's asked me to sort of run through some slides here that I've put together on this. So changing security landscape and changing certificate landscape and automation. So a bit about what's going on. So the sort of the change ahead. So what is coming? I think you all may know what's coming, but you know we've all been sort of on this journey for a while. But let's make clear what's there. TLS certificate lifetimes are shrinking, and it's already started. We've already seen that certificates have gone down from 398 days to 200 days since March, and they're going to go down next March to 100 days, and then 2 years following that to 47 days. What that means is you're going to have to be better at replacing certificates in a sort of automated way rather than going down the route of manual replacement, because it's just not going to get scalable as those times get shorter. And you know, this is exactly where the industry and the CAB forum are trying to steer us towards is that. So within that, domain IP validity is going to be decreasing as well, down to 10 days. So they're going to be checking more that those things are valid as well. Yeah, so this is a global thing. It's come from the CA browser forum or the CAB forum. It's mandated by the various browser vendors, so there's not really many ways to get out of it. There's no opt-out. And at 47 days, renewals every 6 to 7 weeks. And I would suggest practically that's every 30 days, because you want that little buffer in there. If you've already done something with certificate automation, you'll know that you want that little bit of time just to know, that hasn't worked that time. Why is it not working? Let's have time to fix it, etc. Okay, so why does it matter to colleges and universities? Well, the manual renewal cycles will no longer scale. So, you know, if you're already having that sort of yearly thing, you're already down to 200 days of going around all these certificates and putting them all on and whatnot. And also, I guess you also have them sort of going off at different times, depending on when systems are built, when certificates are renewed, etc. Many organizations have got small multi-role teams working under pressure. So, you know, it's not really going to take an awful lot for things to start to come unstuck. You've got a higher outage risk from those missed renewals as well. So, you know, the idea that users are presented with a security error, we don't want to see that. We want to make sure that people have fixed their systems before they get to renewal. And I left this slide in here because I do like this one. It's quite a few years old, this lovely thing that was shared. But, you know, is this what users see when they get an error message? You know, they don't know. They just want to click a button. Take me to the thing. That's what they want to do. So yeah, I thought that was a useful one to share. How do we solve this? Automation becomes the foundation of infrastructure. So you're going to need to have a good, solid foundation of automation to make sure that things are being renewed, and maybe also monitored and checked to make sure that, you know, renewals aren't being missed or that certificates aren't being put on. Certificates need to renew automatically, so you don't want to be in a situation where you have to manually intervene. Deployments happen without human intervention. So failures need to be detected before visible outages to your key teaching, learning, and operational platforms. You want to make sure that security and availability improve together. So you don't want to sort of, if you're trying to deal with one or the other, you know, you could see availability decrease because you've tried to deal with a security issue and not got that right. So it's only really going to be manageable with automation. Okay, so automation and ACME. So ACME is the industry standard protocol. This is why we're focusing on ACME as being the main thing to start looking at, is how do you get ACME into things. It's designed for short-lived certificates. So if any of you have used any of the sort of free certificates that are available, then you'll know how that sort of goes along. It's supported across web servers, load balancers, cloud platforms, and containers. So there's lots of different ways of doing this. It fits with sort of DevOps, but it also can fit in with traditional estates. So there's lots of ways to integrate this. And lastly, there's no vendor lock-in really. You know, you could probably change out one ACME implementation for another fairly easily. You know, it's all protocol based. So, you know, yeah. So yeah, we want to avoid situations where you're sort of locked into a particular vendor. Right, let me work out how to use a slide deck. Right, what should you do? So we recommend you do an inventory of your certificates, both internal and external. You can use crt.sh or crt.sh, which should show certificate transparency logs. That's run by one of the certificate authorities. You might have heard of them. They're called Sectigo. And it's a really good platform. What I will say is it occasionally has the odd hiccup and isn't available. So if you need to try again later, that's something we're very familiar with, is that sometimes it gets a bit overloaded and you don't get any results for a little while. So, but it's certainly a really good way, and we've used it in every conversation we've had about certificate automation. Has been, yeah, here's this. You should introduce CAA records. These are records that show that which CAs you authorize to issue certificates on your behalf. So doing that means that the CAs, the CAB forum approved CAs, can't issue certificates unless there's a CAA record that says that you support them. So it gives a very clear list of which certificate authorities you are supporting. And if you want to look at some CAA records, just have a look at, most domains. We've got them in jisc.ac.uk, so you can just, if you're a Unix nerd, you can dig CAA jisc.ac.uk and you're going to get that list up. And that's the sort of thing you'll need. And if you look at Wikipedia on CAA records, there's a good thing on that. But it's a really good thing to put in there because you've got a very clear of which certificate authorities you're using. It'll also prevent other people from going off and using other certificate authorities that you don't want them to use. You should identify ACME capable systems, so anything that's got ACME in it. Also make sure that when you're procuring new things that you put that in as either an optional or a mandatory thing, is to have ACME support. Ideally, you should move away from wildcard certificates. So wildcard certificates aren't really going to scale terribly well in this automated environment because the automation ACME client creates the private key on the fly and then uses that as part of the process of the certificate that it's already pulled down. And obviously there's other verification steps that happen. But yeah, you need to sort of think about not using wildcard certificates in that scenario. There might be some discrete scenarios, and we were talking to a customer earlier where we said actually you could probably use wildcard in a particular scenario where there's a sort of single management domain, single ecosystem product service. If you are at the point where you are emailing around PKCS12 files, then separately emailing people passwords, no, please don't do that. That is not where we need to be. You should implement monitoring. Definitely think about monitoring.
David pulled the plug.
So automation is no longer optional. These short-lived certificates are coming whether you are ready or not, and Jisc is here to support you. So some resources. Here's a few links to a few resources. So there's an article there on how you use DNS01 with the Jisc primary name server service. So that's one way of dealing with the DNS challenges that you sometimes need, particularly if you're trying to use certificates with, say, Let's Encrypt. The introduction of something called DNS Account 01 is also going to make this easier. We've already got some security certificate automation guidance out there, and we also release regular blogs. So there's a couple of links there. So security considerations. So CAA records matter. So I've talked a little bit about this, but it's that DNS level control over who can issue certificates, prevents the misissuance. It's been mandatory since 2017, and it reduces your attack surface. So without CAA records, any trusted CA can issue certificates for your domain. And the most likely that somebody's going to go and get a certificate from is something like Let's Encrypt, because they only need a DNS entry and they can just open port 80 to do the verification over HTTP, and they've got a certificate. So it's a good idea also to keep on top of your DNS. So common mistakes with CAA is just forgetting to update the records when switching CAs and blocking the wildcard issuance unintentionally. So there's a separate issue wild for wildcards. So there's issue and issue wild. There's two different records, and obviously a reporting email address as well. So that's useful as well to have so that things get reported correctly. So what about wildcard certificates? So we don't think they scale in automated environments. There's operational risk. One cert, you compromise all the subdomains. So if you've got multiple administrators, it's not great. And I don't mean multiple administrators in the same group. I probably mean multiple administrators in different management domains or whatever. And it's hard to rotate the certificates safely and the keys. automation friction, the challenges are more complex. Like I said, the CAA issue wild often missed. And it's just a poor fit for short-lived life cycles. So the security impact, so it breaks that least privileged trust. So yeah, so having that private key just everywhere is not a good idea. You know, you need to keep private keys private and have more of them and less spread of those keys, basically. And it can hamper incident response as well. So, you know, you'd have more, if you had an incident on one system, more systems would be brought into the fray, basically. So where not to automate. So where don't you automate? So Wi-Fi certificates. So there's 2 to 3 use cases in Wi-Fi certificates. So the EAP server certificates, long life CAN certificates is probably the better trust model. So this is sort of Eduroam, GovRoam area, really, Wi-Fi, EAP, and 82.1x WPA enterprise, all of that radius authentication. It's a good idea just to use a long life certificate in that area rather than trying to get into this short-lived cycle. There's no need, and it's a better trust model because all of the compromises in that area are pretty much to do with trusting CAs widely without the requisite controls. So administrative and captive portals. So you might need to automate these with an external CA. So you might need to look at those because obviously devices might rock up at your captive portal. They're not devices you manage. You can't get a certificate onto them. So again, you might have to use Acme. I'm not talking about EAP-TLS today. I know EAP-TLS exists. We're aware of it, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Okay, so SAML Trust Fabric Certificate. So if you're using SAML or things like the UK Access Management Federation, we don't, again, a long life certificate is fine because in SAML, actually nothing really cares about the wrapper. If somebody's implementation cares about the wrapper, it's probably something they built around it. It's not the SAML implementation itself. Most SAML implementations just don't care about what is in there. They care about having a key. The algorithms are dealt with differently. The encryption algorithms are actually dealt with through the metadata that is exchanged, not through the key sizes or any of not the key sizes, but the key algorithms or whatever. So yeah, in that area, don't worry about it too much. Try and just use long life certificates, and if they expire, it's not actually a problem between systems generally. Okay, Jisc certificate services. So as you know, we have the certificate framework, sector negotiated certificates with DigiCert, a simplified procurement, and significant sector savings. You've got access to Cert Central for certificate management and support for Acme based automation. And you know, there's documentation there on their Acme support. It uses sort of key-based access whereby you have effectively some key material that you have to put on the clients that go to request. So there's not that validation exchange that you get with other CAs there. And obviously there's a buyer's guide with a link there, which I'm sure we can put in the chat. DigiCert also offer their trust lifecycle management. However, it's an additional option. It's outside of the Jisc framework, but it is available. It has Acme support for public certificates, but also private PKI, the central inventory, policy, visibility. So there's a whole raft of information there on that link, and we can put that in as well. So in terms of our consultancy service, we are running a certificate automation pilot at the moment. So we're working to support 4 Jisc members. It's an exploratory consultancy to support those members. So we've done individual scoping calls with those members, and we're having regular calls with them to try to progress some of the problem areas. So lots of people have got things that they've managed to tackle, but there's going to be some left that they're like, oh, these are quite knotty. How do I deal with this? So some of the common areas that are under investigation that we're talking to people about and trying to work out how they get through it and navigate are sort of remote desktop services, so RDS, RDP, Azure app proxy and effectively the Entra app proxy, SQL server reporting services, and also scripted automation of Linux Windows systems, which actually that's a fairly well tried and tested area, but obviously everyone's got something that they sort of bring and go, oh, well, that's just a Unix system or a Windows system that needs automating. Monitoring is also something we might look at in that pilot as well. So there's lots of monitoring tools. I'll talk about some of those later. We are looking at vendor agnostic solutions, so we're not tying anyone into a particular vendor with what we're implementing. So we are working based on the CA that they already use. We're not tying it into DigiCert, which is who our framework's through. We're not tying it into Let's Encrypt. We're not tying it into SectEgo. We're just going, actually, we'll work with what you've got and we'll try and help you navigate this landscape. Okay, so some of the tools that we have come across and are using and people have talked to us about. So CertBot is the Linux-based Acme client. There's obviously the Simple Acme and Posh Acme on Windows. Monit, great for monitoring services and sort of when things are going to expire, but also things like Uptime Kuma can be used as well in that area. Caddy, if you're looking at a web server that can be used as sort of a proxy and front end and deal with the certificate renewals automatically, it doesn't need any built-in tools to do Acme, it's all built in, then that's something that we use there. So a bit about the post-pilot work. So we will be integrating this into the existing TNI consultancy service offering that currently offers health checks, deployment and configuration support related to SAML, Shibboleth and the UK Access Management Federation, but also free radius covering, free radius or MPS, and then covering EduRoam and GovRoam. I didn't write GovRoam, I should have. Anyway, certificate offering post-pilot, we expect that to launch from August, maybe September. We're sort of going with that sort of time frame to launch something on that, and to have some information about what we might be doing in that area. And that's me done. So I'll open the floor for questions.